Please see the link in the description to download a worksheet for this video. We suggest that viewers who are sensitive to the life sciences ask an adult to watch this video first, to be sure it will be suitable for that viewer. If you have not already done so, we recommend that you watch the video introducing human organ systems before watching this one. These friends are enjoying some hot tea while talking to each other. To do this, they are using 5 senses: their hearing, vision, taste, smell, and touch. This man is able to walk along this rope because, like the other people, he is using his vision and touch. But he is also using other senses, especially his sense of balance and his positional awareness. It's challenging, but with practice, he can even do some tricks. In this video, we'll introduce 7 of our senses that make us aware of our surroundings and of our movements. Those senses are taste, smell, hearing, touch, vision, balance, and positional awareness. We have organs for each of these senses. For example, our eye is the organ that detects light. Our ear is the organ that detects sound. Our tongue is the organ that detects flavor, and our nose is the organ that detects aromas or odors. As these organs detect things around us, they then send signals to our brain. It's our brains that process those signals, so we can then recognize what we're seeing, hearing, or other senses we're getting. And it's also the brain that records those signals as memories, so we can remember them. Our tongues are strong muscles. They let us blow bubbles with gum, talk, sing, and chew food. But they are also covered in tiny taste buds, which tell us what we're eating. Our taste buds can detect 5 flavor types. Those flavors are sweet like sugar, salt like on these pretzels, sour like lemons, savory like tomatoes, and bitter like dark vegetables. Although biologists used to think that we could only taste some flavors in some parts of the tongue, now we know that all parts of the tongue can taste all flavors. As with the other senses, the tongue sends signals to the brain of what it has detected, and then the brain recognizes what we're tasting. The nose is so sensitive that we can tell what's cooking in the kitchen even without seeing it. The nose works by detecting tiny invisible particles in the air that enter our nose. As we inhale air to breathe, some of those tiny particles go into the nose, which sends signals to the brain. Then the brain recognizes what we're smelling. Hot food and drinks are easier to smell because the tiny particles rise from food and drinks faster than those coming from cold food or drinks. That's why it's easier to smell hot tea than iced tea. Our ears are like tiny microphones that detect noises and then send those signals to the brain. The brain can recognize each sound signal. For example, the brain processes signals from the ears and recognizes which part of this sound is a singing voice and which part is made by the guitars. Each time there is a sound wave moves our eardrums a little bit. Then 3 bones convert the eardrum's motion into signals that travel along a nerve to the brain. Our ears can be easily damaged. That's why we wear ear protection around loud noises, which may help prevent deafness. Our skin has many touch receptors, and there are different types of receptors. Some let us feel hot objects, so we can avoid getting burned. Some let us feel cold objects, so we can avoid getting frostbite. The tip of our fingers have a lot of touch receptors, so we can easily distinguish tiny bumps when reading Braille. We also have touch receptors that sense vibrations. That's how we know we're getting a call if our phones are on silence, but they're vibrating. And we have receptors to detect pain all over our skin. That way, we immediately know where there might be a problem we need to react to, like if an insect is biting or stinging us. As with all other sensory receptors, touch receptors send signals to our brain through nerves throughout our body. That's why we know exactly what we're touching, or if something has touched us and where. Our eyes are the most complicated sense receptors in our bodies. Although our eyes might look like they're small, they're quite big. Most of the eyes are hidden by our eyelids and inside our heads. Our eyes are like balls. That's why these toys are fairly accurate. Except, of course, our eyes don't have feet. As in this animation, our eyes work together so we look at an object with both eyes. We can only see something when light enters our eyes. For example, we can see this campfire because it makes light. But we cannot see the faces of the campers because their faces don't make light. But in the daytime, we can see who the campers are because the sunlight reflects off their faces, then into our eyes. For example, this woman is able to see a blue bird because some sunlight bounces off the bird and then goes into her eye. Our eyeballs are hollow but filled with a clear fluid, so light can enter through the pupil and then briefly hit the back of the eye until that light vanishes. When light touches the back of the eye then sends a signal through a nerve to the brain. Then the brain will figure out what we're looking at. This cat's eyes look bright, so it may seem that its eyes are making light. They are not making light. The eyes are only reflecting the light from the house. If something makes light, then it will send a beam of light into the darkness that we can easily see. That's why we can see a beam of light coming from the flashlight that this person is holding. In contrast, when this cat looks into the darkness, there is no beam of light coming from its eyes. Eyes do not make light, but some animals, like cats, have a reflective surface on the back of their eyes, which is a little bit like a mirror. So if cats look towards a light source, then we can see some of that light reflect off the back of their eyes and come towards us. Our eyes work best when the amount of light entering each eye is a medium amount. The center black part of the eyeball is called the pupil, and we automatically adjust its size based on how bright the environment is. If the environment is dark, like being inside, then our pupils get big, so that more light enters the eyes. If the environment is very bright, like being outside, then our pupils get smaller to prevent too much light from going into the eyes. Too much light going into the eye can damage the eye, and may even cause blindness. That's why we never look at the sun. And that's why welders wear special equipment to protect their eyes. Our balance centers are located in the inner part of each ear. They work a little like a carpenter's level. Then they send signals through a nerve to the brain to tell us what position our heads are in. They help us walk and run without falling over. But if we shake our heads too much, or if we go on a ride that moves us in circles, then the fluid moves around for a little while, which makes us feel dizzy. And we might even fall when trying to walk. This man is able to dribble a ball and even pass it between his legs without looking at the ball. He can do that because his wrist, elbows, hips, knees, and ankles all have receptors that tell his brain how bent each of those joints are. That's why he knows what position his hands and feet are in at every second, even though he is not looking at them. This is positional awareness, and we use it all the time, whether walking, playing an instrument, or playing sports. For example, this baseball player keeps his eyes on the ball, but he still knows exactly where his hands are, even though he never looks at his hands. Although our sensory organs are very advanced, the brain is more advanced than any of them, and it's the brain that is processing signals from each of the receptors. For example, the yellow-colored areas shows the parts of the brain that processing signals coming from the ears. The green-colored areas shows the part of the brain that processes signals from the eyes. The blue area that is right next to the red area processes signals from our skin so we know where we're being touched. One way to think about the relationship between our brain and our sensory organs is to think of a computer and the peripherals attached to it. This microphone can sense sound, so it's like the computer's ear. It then sends signals along this wire to the computer, just like the ears send signals along a nerve to the brain. A webcam is like the computer's eye because it can sense light. It then sends signals along this wire to the computer, just like the eyes send signals along a nerve to the brain. And this keyboard is a lot like our skin because it can sense which part of the keyboard we have touched, and sends those signals along a wire to the computer telling it which buttons were pressed. That's just like our touch receptors that send signals along nerves telling the brain which parts of our body were touched. Computers of all sizes, including our smartphones and tablets, can store the images taken by their cameras or the sounds recorded by their microphones. That data is stored in the computer's memory that we can access in future. Likewise, our sensory organs send signals to our brain which processes those signals so we recognize things. And it also stores the images, sounds, and other senses we've experienced. But instead of calling that stored information data, we call that stored information memories. It's our brains that store memories of what we've seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and felt. Here's a summary of this topic. Please pause this video if you wish to read this. If you're interested in practice tests that are similar to state exams, but with detailed, colorful explanations for each answer, then please see our apps in the App Store. Many of these are free and none expire or limit their function. Since we only make educational products for children, none of our apps have third-party advertising, in-app purchasing, or connect to the internet. Please subscribe if you'd like to be notified of future educational videos we make. Thanks for your attention.